Legal Peppersoup, episode number 1, recorded on the 20th of July 2016. The music is provided by Landlord of Virus, and this episode is sponsored by Social Clothing and OJN Solicitors.
Welcome to OJN's Legal Peppersoup podcast. We put the peppersoup in the podcast because in each episode we dish up and serve you extra hot legal topics for your consideration and consumption. Our aim is to dissect the issues, get straight to the point, and provide you with useful legal information and advice.
Is that crystal clear like the biblical take mene you fasting?
We like to keep it simple. I am your host, Obi Wakeji, Principal Solicitor of OJN Solicitors based in Enfield Town, Greater London in England. The hot topic of today's show is Brexit and its effects on European nationals, its effects on free movement when the UK finally leaves the European Union, and also what does this all mean for the European Court of Human Rights. Now, in the studio with me is Mr. Lawrence Jegede. He's a qualified solicitor. His main areas of expertise are immigration, litigation and employment. He's in particular an immigration expert and has a wealth of experience, almost 10 years. He's here today to break down these thorny issues regarding Brexit and its effects on EEA Nationals in the UK who are present in the UK. Lawrence, thank you for coming onto the show.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
We're here to discuss the effects of Brexit on EEA nationals. What surprised me was that, in fact, that the UK did decide to leave following the referendum on the 23rd of June this year. Now, it seems that people were not prepared for the effects of Brexit and what it all meant. Now, in particular, I've received a lot of calls from European nationals not knowing where they stand. Now, what would you advise European nationals to do? Where do they stand? What's the way forward right now?
Yes, it's almost a month after the referendum that took place on the 23rd of June this year. And yes, you are correct. The position is not any clearer than it was after a month that the referendum took place. Now, I will try to break it down as much as possible so we can have clarity on this very important issue that has been troubling quite a lot of people, particularly European nationals and their family members. But let me start with providing some form of assurance or reassurance to EU nationals and their family member. Yes, it is correct that the United Kingdom has voted to leave the EU, but at the moment, the UK remains a member of the European Union. Therefore, EU nationals and their family members in the UK, their position also remains the same. Nothing changes in any form, in any shape whatsoever until the UK finally comes out of the European Union. And what that means is they continue to have the right to remain in the UK, they continue to have the rights to live and to work and to do whatever they've been doing before the 23rd of June. The process for exiting the EU has to start first. That process is not even started. There is something called Article 50 of the Treaty of EU. The Prime Minister of this country has to invoke that article, which is not being invoked yet. Now, until that Article 50 is invoked, UK cannot begin the process of leaving the EU. And my understanding is the minimum period for that process to take is at least 2 years. Now, after that process is finalized, the UK and other European nations, they will have to ratify any agreement, any treaty into their whole law. I anticipate that process will also take another 2 or 3 years. So, the situation remains the same for the next 4, 5, 6 years in my own estimate. That means for the time being, EU nationals and their family members who are exercising what is called treaty right in the UK, yes, everybody should take steps to know what's going on to formalize their status in the UK, but they need not worry great deal at the moment. They should just continue to live their life as normal. They shouldn't pack their bags and move back to their home country.
We'll come into that. I mean, the new Brexit minister is now called, the new post called the Brexit minister, I think it is.
Yes, David Davis.
Yes. Now, he said something about not giving assurances to EU nationals who are in the UK, or he might impose some type of restrictions to avoid an influx of European nationals coming into the UK.
That's right.
before this process concludes. Now,
That's right.
surely that creates some kind of uncertainty to European nationals who are here.
Yes, now you're right. The advice that I just gave earlier, that is where the certainty ends. The fact that yes, you still continue to exercise your treaty rights, your position is secure. However, there are numerous uncertainties that surround that situation. For example, like the example you just gave, now, are they entitled to continue to live? Will the UK change its position anytime soon? Now, because of those uncertainties, the advice that I've been giving, and I know other immigration experts have been giving to clients and people who are making inquiry, is because we do not know exactly what's going to happen, the Prime Minister has not guaranteed the position of EU nationals and their family members in the UK. Will they continue to enjoy all the rights and the benefits that they enjoy at the moment in the event that UK should leave the EU eventually? And because of those uncertainties, I would advise EU nationals and their family members to take steps to formalize, regularize their position in the UK. And what I mean by that is, even though at the moment you can go to the authorities, you can go to your employer or any prospective employer and show your passport, for example, German, Italian, Spanish passport, and say this is the basis upon which I'm entitled to remain and work in the UK. But all of that could change, and very likely it's going to change. Now, before those changes come into effect, what you should do now is obtain documentary evidence that will be useful for you in the future. I mean, you have to apply to the Home Office for what is called registration certificate, if you are a member of European Union country.
All right, so if you're a European national,
Yes.
and you're working, for example, on your normal passport, you haven't taken any steps to formalize or regularize your status. What you're saying is that a European national should apply to the Home Office for a registration certificate.
That's right.
To confirm their status within the UK.
To confirm your status in the UK, because the passport you have, your German, Italian, French passport, they may not be that very useful in the future. But if you have that legal document, registration certificate, or permanent residence card, or document certifying your permanent residence in the UK, you can then show whoever requires you to prove your right to remain in the UK those documents.
Okay, what's the importance of having the registration certificate? So say, for example, if I'm a European national, I've applied to the Home Office now, I've obtained this registration certificate. How does that save me? How does that change anything if in a few years' time, when in a few years' time the UK leaves the European Union? Surely that might be meaningless.
You're correct. Again, as I said earlier, there are so many uncertainties, and all we're advising people to do now is to do things that will at least alleviate those uncertainties. Because if we have those documents now, there are some provisions in the treaty called the Vienna Convention. I must say that legal opinions on those provisions are quite divided at the moment, but my own view is, if your position is already secured by obtaining this document, yes, the UK government may well change their position in the future, but at least you have ground to say, I've already exercised my treaty rights, and because of this provision of Vienna Convention, I believe that I should be able to continue to enjoy those rights that I've obtained under the treaty rights. So, for example, not just the registration certificate, in fact, the registration certificate is the first step. If you just come from Italy, Spain, or Germany, or France, you have to get the registration certificate first. But if you live in the UK, you've exercised treaty rights in the UK for 5 years, those ones, they should obtain what is called permanent residence. My own view is, if you have permanent residence, you are almost or definitely on the same par as somebody who has what is called indefinite leave to remain in the UK, and that means that you have the right to continue to live in the UK indefinitely without any restriction on your rights to remain, to work, and to live in the UK.
Okay, so you're saying that if a European national has lived and worked in the UK for more than 5 years,
yes,
they're entitled to make an application for permanent residence.
For permanent residence, the process for that is you have to be able to prove to the Home Office that you've been exercising treaty rights. You are a qualified person. So we go to the next question: who exercises treaty rights? Now, there are different categories for this. The first one is you are a worker, you are a self-employed, a student, self-sufficient person, Now, of course, if you're working, it is easy for you to prove that. It should be easy for you to prove that you're working. You just have to produce your pay slip, your P60, letters from employer to say, this is my proof that I've been working in the UK for 5 years. Again, for self-employed person, all you have to provide is your NI contribution receipt, statement of self-assessment returns, your bank statement, receipts, and invoices to show the kind of work activities you've been engaged in the UK. But if you are not any of these two sets of people, then you're required to have what is called comprehensive medical insurance, and you must also be able to prove that you are a self-sufficient person. That means you are financially independent. You're not relying on the state. You do not expect the state to maintain you in the UK. You have your own financial resources to maintain and to provide for yourself or your family members in the UK. In addition to that, as I've already said, you need to have comprehensive medical insurance to say, I'm not going to make recourse to the NHS, even though you might still be able to go to the NHS if you're sick. But at least for the purpose of the application to the Home Office, you have to have that comprehensive medical insurance. If you're able to provide this documentation, then you are in a good position to make application to the Home Office and say, Home Office, I've been in the UK for 5 years. I'm asking you to give me a permanent residence card.
Oh, all right. Let me just make that clear. Now, you're saying that in order to make this application for permanent residence, first of all, if you're a European national, you have to be a qualified person.
You have to be a qualified
And a qualified
person.
person is a worker.
Yes.
Somebody who's self-employed. Somebody who's self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient.
Or a student.
A student.
Now, if you're a worker or self-employed, you're saying that you need to just provide evidence that you are a worker or self-employed. For example, providing if you're employed, your wage slips, bank statements, job contracts, things like that. Your employment contract.
That's correct.
But if you're self-employed, your registration with HMRC.
That's correct.
Tax returns, as you've just said.
Yes.
But a student, a self-sufficient person. Now, how does a student become a qualified person?
The position of the student is, of course, you need to prove that you are a student. You are attending either public or private educational institution in the UK. You then also have to provide, again, comprehensive medical insurance for yourself. If you have any family members in the UK, they also must have that comprehensive medical insurance.
So the importance of this comprehensive medical insurance is to show that you're not going to be a burden on the state.
That's right. That's right.
If you're a student, you have to have that in place.
You have to have that in place.
And if you're self-sufficient, or if you're a self-sufficient person, you have to have that in place.
You must also have
What
it in
is
place.
comprehensive medical insurance?
As you are aware, there is the National Health Service in the UK. It is not the same in some of these European countries. So what the government has done is, yes, we have this generous medical system in our country. We don't want anybody from outside the UK just to come and take advantage of our generosity. So if you come into the UK, we want you to have your own personal, in fact, we can call it health insurance.
Like private medical
insurance. That is what it is really. So come here. Yes, you are allowed to come, but you have to have your own medical insurance. Let's just call it medical insurance. And that is what it is really. Obtain your own medical insurance in case you need medical treatment. You should be able to get a medical treatment without going to the NHS for it.
All right. So what is the position in relation to a European national who's not working, but their family member is? So say, for example, a European person is here with their spouse, but they're not working, but their spouse is working. What is the situation there? Can the spouse, who is not a European national, still make that application for permanent residence since they've been working for 5 years and supporting their European national member?
Now, if the sponsor is not working, which is what I believe you're asking, right?
Yes.
The sponsor, that is the EEA National, is not working, but the family member, the spouse or the child, is working. Now, you see, the focus is mainly on the sponsor, even though the applicant, the family member, is working, but they expect the sponsor to be a qualified person. So if that sponsor is not working, that is not the end of the world, by the way. But that sponsor must be able to say, I'm a self-sufficient person.
Okay,
and then
I'm a qualified person.
I'm a qualified person,
but
as a self-sufficient person,
yes.
I have my comprehensive medical insurance, or I'm a student, I have my medical insurance. Now, there is another category, by the way, a job seeker. Now, that one's a bit complicated. There are too many conditions attached to being a job seeker. If you come to the UK seeking job, you can prove that you are actively seeking a job. Then you could also qualify as a qualified person. But again, as I said, that one's a bit complicated. The easiest way is I'm working, I'm self-employed. If you are not any of those two, I am a self-sufficient person and I have my medical insurance in place.
Or a student.
Or a student, and again, I have my comprehensive medical insurance in place.
All right, so how does a European national or European national family member, how do they go about by making this application to the Home Office?
The process is not that very complicated. There is a form that you have to complete. Again, it may not be compulsory for you to complete that form, but just let me make it simple for our listeners. You have to complete the form. If you are making the initial application, you have to for either registration certificate or for residence card. The form is EEA FM. That is a form that you have to complete. Again, you just have to provide the proof of your residence in the UK, proof of your employment in the UK or self-employment or your self-sufficiency and the comprehensive medical insurance that you require.
All right, so the form, if you want to formalize your status in the UK for European national, the form you need to look for is called an EEA FM.
Yes, that's correct.
And where would you find this form?
The form should be online, www.gov.uk. Now, that website is not user friendly, but I would just advise you to Google that form, EEA FM in bracket.
Is that the same form that you'd need to use if you wanted to apply for permanent residence?
Now the process is the same for permanent residence, but the form is different. The form for permanent residence is different. That one is EEA PR, permanent residence. That is the form that you require for permanent residence application.
And this form is fully downloadable.
It's
on
downloadable
the
online. You can access it on the government website, gov.uk, or you can just easily Google that form, and then it should come out to you, print it out, complete it. There is a fee payable, by the way. It's just the £5 is the application fee payable to the Home Office. Again, what is important with the application is your documentary evidence must be on point. You have to prove that you've lived and worked in the UK for 5 continuous years. By the way, there shouldn't be any break in that 5 years period. It has to be, there is a key word there, continuous. It has to be continuous. That is what you need to bear in mind.
All right, so what are you saying, that if I was working and I lost my job, and in between my job I was unemployed for 3-4 months, I wouldn't qualify?
As long as you can prove that between that 3 or 4 months period you are looking for a job. Remember, I said earlier that
yes,
a job seeker could also be classified as a qualified person. So if you can prove that within that 3 or 4 months period I was looking for a job, then you should be okay.
All right, so how long can I be without a job? So say, for example, I came in 2009 and I worked to 2012, which is 3 years, and
yes,
for the next 1 year I didn't have a job, but then I found a job in 2014 or 15. How do I show the 5 years? When is the continuous period broken?
Yeah, you see, now there appears to be a time scale. They expect you to get a job within 6 months. There appears to be that minimum period, or either minimum or maximum. I'm not really too sure how they apply that rule there, but there appears to be that time scale of 6 months. They expect you to show that you've been actively looking for a job within that period of 6 months. But I mean, I've done a case before where my client actually, we were able to prove that she was looking for a job for even over a year. So that's what you really need to prove: active search for a job. Even though 6 months appear to be the cutoff, but I've done a case of 9 months, of 12 months, and we were able to prove that this person should also be classified as a qualified person.
So how can you prove that you've been looking for a job? What kind of documents would you need?
The easiest way to do that is to show that you're claiming or you're receiving job seekers allowance. Of course, the fact that you are claiming or receiving job seekers allowance shows that you're seeking for a job. And now the process with people who are seeking or obtaining job seekers allowance is they must satisfy the job center plus people that they are actively seeking for a job. There is a form that they get them to complete every week. They go there to sign. That is one way of proving it. The job application forms that you completed, your registration to job companies like read.co.uk, monster.co.uk, total job. Your registration with those organizations should be able to satisfy the home office that you've been actively looking for a job. Job confirmation that you receive in your emails. Those are the kind of documents that you will need to produce to show that you've been actively looking for a job.
All right, so just to recap, what we're saying is that at the moment there will be no major changes to European nationals and their rights to remain and to work in the UK. What you're advising people to do is to formalize and regularize their status by either applying for a registration certificate,
yes,
or applying for permanent residence if they've exercised their treaty rights for more than 5 years. And by doing that, they can go online and download a form, either a form called the EEA FM or EEA PR for permanent residence.
That's right.
Complete it. It costs £65. Send that off to the Home Office. You should have some type of formal entitlement or formal document to show that you've been exercising your treaty rights in the UK, so that when the changes occur in the UK following the UK's exit from Europe, they'll be in a better position.
They should, yes, they should be in a better position. Again, bearing in mind that no absolute guarantee is being given by the government, but I find it inconceivable that even after UK leaves EU, the government will now say to over 3 million EU nationals and their family members living in this country that you need to go back to your country. We cannot predict what the government is going to do or could do, but personally I find it inconceivable that they will say to those people that have been able to produce those documents, registration certificates, permanent residence card, to now tell them go back to Italy, go back to Germany, go back to France. I really do not think that is going to happen.
Do you think the situation might change or they might bring in some kind of laws in relation to what David said, to avoid the influx of European nationals? Do you think it will change for people who just arrived now?
Now, that is a possibility, but I'm not so comfortable with that suggestion, and the reason for that is this. At the moment, UK is still a member of EU. They have to continue to abide by EU laws. Now, EU law does not allow any member state to put form of restriction of free movement in any way whatsoever, which is what David Davis is suggesting. If you're a Romanian or Bulgarian or Polish, in the next 2 years, very close to the moment we're about to finally leave the EU, if you should come to this country, we can actually put a restriction on your rights to stay after we leave. I do not see how EU Commission, EU Parliament will allow such restriction to be applied to nationals of member states in a way that is actually breaching the old principle of free movement. That is why I do not believe EU will allow this country to do that.
Is it a question of whether the EU will allow it? Surely if the UK are leaving the EU, then they'll just do what they want.
But they can do what they want after exit is finally taking place. But before exit is done, they still subject to EU rules, EU laws. Therefore, they have to continue to adhere to those laws. EU law does not allow a member state to do what David Davis is suggesting.
I see. Right, thank you for clarifying that. In relation to free movement, what do you think will happen once the UK leaves the European Union? How will this affect travel of British people to Europe and of European people to Britain?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and it is at the moment anybody's guess, you see, because one of the main reasons for, well, as far as we understand, why people decided to vote to leave EU is because of the issue of free movement, immigration. So if UK finally leaves EU, what becomes of EU nationals who want to come to UK, and also UK nationals who want to go the other way? Now, the first thing is the principle of free movement will cease to apply. That means the benefits we enjoy at the moment to go to Europe and live there and stay there and work there, and for European nationals to also come to UK, that principle, that system will cease to apply. So what's going to happen, nobody knows for sure at the moment. But I believe that there will be some form of at least limited form of movement allowed. Perhaps something like visa waiver program similar to the one that we use if you want to go to the US, where you're allowed to go to US but not for more than 3 months. So those are the kind of systems that I expect them to put in place. But again, this is my own opinion, by the way. It may happen that way, it may not happen that way. It may well be that if you want to go to France or Spain, you will have to apply for a visa. That is an extreme scenario, but it is possible. That we cannot at the moment rule anything out.
I see, that sounds ominous, having to make an application for a visa,
yes,
in order to travel to Europe. But I guess those are the consequences of Brexit and leaving the EU.
Yes.
Now, a lot was said by the Brexiteers during the campaign for the referendum to leave the EU, that the UK will no longer be subject to the European Court of Human Rights. Now, how does Brexit affect the European Court of Human Rights? Will that be scrapped? How will that work? I do understand that there's the Human Rights Act that was brought into domestic law in 1998,
yes,
by the then Labour government. What will happen to all of that?
Yes, I'm aware of those assertions made by Brexiteers in relation to European Convention of Human Rights, European Court of Human Rights, but I can categorically say here those assertions are not correct. The fact that the UK has voted to leave the EU, and if and when UK finally leaves the EU, does not have any connection whatsoever to European Convention of Human Rights and European Court of Human Rights. They are two completely different entities. You see, there is EU, the organization called EU, European Union. That's a political organization. And then you have the European Convention of Human Rights. It is what it is for, human rights. They do not have any connection. In fact, you have some countries who are not members of EU, for example, Russia, Turkey, Albania, Armenia, who are signatories to ECHR. So if and when UK finally leaves the EU, the UK is still a signatory to ECHR, and they will continue to be a signatory. Now, if a separate process will have to be put in place for that, it is not this referendum that's done that, or we do that. A different process will have to be put in place for that. But the fact that they voted to leave the EU, all it does is it might make it easier to come out of ECHR, because I understand that one of the conditions for countries who want to join EU is they have to be a signatory to ECHR. So now that the UK has voted to leave the EU, there is nothing forcing the country to remain a signatory to ECHR, so they can easily say, oh, we are not a member of EU anymore. No EU institution will force us to or impose ECHR upon us. Therefore, we can just come out of this convention. That is all it does. It might make it easier to come out of ECHR, but at the moment ECHR continues to apply. Human Rights Act 1998 is still in force, and it will continue to be in force until it is repealed by the Parliament, which the Prime Minister is in favor of bringing in what they call British Bill of Rights. But there's not even any consultation for that at the moment, and I do not think that's going to happen anytime soon.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Lawrence Jegede, for taking out your time to explain to us the effects of Brexit on European nationals and their family members who are present in Britain or the UK, to explain to us what happens to free movement once the UK leaves the European Union, and also the effects of Brexit on the European Court of Human Rights or the European Convention on Human Rights. So that's it from the Legal Peppersoup podcast. Thank you all for listening, because without you, there is no podcast. Please drop us a comment to let us know if you like the show, what we could do to improve, or what you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. You can find us on Facebook, search Legal Peppersoup, on Twitter @Legal Peppersoup, or visit our website /blog legalpeppersoup.wordpress.com. If you'd like any specific advice on any matters discussed on this show, please call 0203 232 2135 or 07 587 132 604, quoting Legal Peppersoup. I am Obi Wakeji signing out, and remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse.